Hey guys, it's your holistic acne herbalist, me, Kat from Catalina's Classroom, and I'm here to bring you the second episode, the second guest episode of the Holistic Classroom. And I got to have a conversation with the amazing functional hormonal specialist, Maria, who is also a functional nutritional therapy practitioner as well. She helps women regulate their cycles and go from painful PMS woes to happy, healthy, ovulating just as you deserve to be. And a lot of the information that she teaches is missing from our mainstream health education. And if you have a uterus, you should definitely be listening to this. If you want to take back your period, if you need a place to get reliable and a person, an expert, to get reliable information on how to start being happy in your own body again from a hormonal point of view, then you need to keep listening to this. I also am sorry for the amount of times we paused and then recorded, but we just had to keep going. So that's why you guys get a 2 hour long episode today. I'm just super excited. Please leave a comment, a like, subscribe, um, and feel free to DM me on Instagram after this episode if you really liked it or share any insights that you have. I love hearing from you guys. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. Talk to you guys later. All right, awesome. No, like when I found your page initially, I was literally like, you were literally like a revelation in my health, like as a practitioner, like as an herbalist, because everyone you talk to is like sugar's bad, carbs are bad. And then I saw your reel, I think, one day, and I was like, what do you mean? I think that you're that person for a lot of people.
Yeah, I didn't mean to be controversial at all.
Mm-hmm.
And first, I mean, thank you so much. That was very sweet saying that,
That's true.
my reel inspired you. I can't even think about which reel it was, but yeah, so I've always gravitated toward the fact that demonizing macronutrients, whether it be carbs, whether it be fats, whether it be protein, which protein doesn't really get a bad rap, but sometimes it does. It just never made sense to me. I don't know, coming from a place of balance. And I think that we need all three macronutrients always. And we can get into like the specifics of sugar
Oh my God.
a little bit more too.
Yes, I want to, because I know that, like, I think the people that find me are kind of just starting out, and a lot of them are still in that headspace of like sugar's bad, I can't have honey. I know you talk about Candida sometimes too, and at that one, like, literally my mind was, I can't use that language, but it was exploding when you said
Mm-hmm.
that sugar does not actually feed Candida. But before we get into all that, I definitely want to hear about you as a person, your health story, how you got into wellness, taking clients, and how you got into this industry. Like, what pushed you forward? Was it something personal, or did you just always have like a passion for helping people in their health?
Yes. So thank you so much for having me on. And this was the hardest question to come up with an answer for, because I really have always thought about my story as not being I feel like my story is not very inspirational, or there was nothing really wrong with me personally that
Mm-hmm.
pushed me into this industry. So I've always felt really like unsure about sharing my story. But as I was kind of digging into like why I actually became a nutritional therapy practitioner, it all stemmed from my childhood. So I had a really interesting childhood in the fact that we never ate home cooked food. And I mean, we ate fast food all the time. We would go through the drive through at McDonald's every day and get French fries. I would walk after school to Baskin Robbins and get I think it was called like a double chocolate shake thing
Uh-huh.
almost every Friday. And so I ate terribly growing up, and I was overweight as a child, but I also did a lot of dance. So I think that saved me a little bit. And I had absolutely no idea how to eat healthy when I was little. And my mom was very overweight as well. And so she was always on a diet. And so I was thinking, the way to get healthy, I guess, is by dieting. And she was always on a diet. She was always trying to have me on a diet. And it was just a little bit overwhelming, not knowing anything about nutrition and then always being told, oh, you need to lose weight. And I'm like, wait, how do you lose weight if I don't know anything about nutrition? And unfortunately, my mom was very overweight and she actually got gastric bypass surgery. And one of the reasons I'm really passionate about education is because I really think that the person that told her to get the bypass surgery and the surgeon never informed her of the risks of the surgery, in the fact that a surgery is very stressful on the body and could you could develop a condition that's been underlying because the stress of the surgery will suppress your immune system afterwards. And unfortunately, she did get cancer after the surgery. I'm not saying that the surgery caused cancer, but I just want to bring into light that something stressful like a surgery, if the body is not in an optimal condition, can bring about and bring into light other things that could be dormant in the body at the time. And so she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and passed away when I was in high school. And it was cancer of unknown origin. It had already metastasized throughout her body. And so I was kind of stumped because doctors couldn't help. They couldn't help at all. And so I was wondering, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did want to help people. And so I was thinking, I want to become a doctor. That seems like the logical thing to
I
do.
saw that story on your Instagram.
Yeah, I wanted to become a doctor. And so when I got to college, I was on the course for pre-med until I walked into a fitness class. And the energy, the community, everything was just kind of blew my mind. And I was like, wait, I can do this for a living? I can teach people how to work out for a living. And so I went up to the teacher naturally, because I kind of like to make my own way for things. And I asked her, hey, how do I do this? What is this? And she said, there's actually a minor that you can take at UC Santa Barbara, where I went to school, that your minor would be fitness and exercise sciences. And I said, okay, how do I do that? So with my pre-med, I was into fitness. I was teaching cycle classes at 7 a.m. And when you're a fitness instructor, everyone comes up to you and they ask you what to eat. And me eating all fast food my whole life, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to tell these people. It's so embarrassing. I better learn a little something. So I took a nutrition class in college, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with human physiology, with the way nutrients act with the body. I basically became obsessed with it, and I even tutored for my physiology class. And I changed my major to biopsychology because it was the closest thing I could find to nutrition at my school at the time. And so I learned a lot about the brain and nutrition, and how it affects the brain. And that was really interesting. And I realized that doctor was not the right path, because I didn't want to treat people that were already sick. I wanted to learn how to prevent things from happening. I wanted to learn how to educate people that stress is a big deal. Stress can cause problems, and that cancer is preventable, and you can prevent cancer as well. And so that's kind of what pushed me into the nutrition and fitness realm. And then I started as a fitness and nutrition specialist, certified through the American Council on Exercise. And I worked with a personal trainer for a while, taking clients and giving them meal plans. And then when I found the NTA in 2017, I mean, I had found it a long time before, but when I finally saved up the money to go there, I just absolutely love the program. And now I'm a functional nutritional therapist, and the rest is history.
It's so, like, first off, I'm so sorry about the loss of your mom. That's a lot to go through, and to also kind of put all those pieces together by yourself. It's so hard, especially when you mentioned like the way you grew up, it wasn't like health wasn't a priority. So I'm sure when you were going through this process, you might have gotten some like side eyes, like, what do you mean you feel like cancer is preventable? Like, that's not what everyone else says. So
Right.
yeah, like, that's awesome that you kept pushing through, like, probably a bunch of people saying, I don't know about that. So that's amazing. You've made a career out of this, and your page has grown so much too since the first time I started following you. So I just want to say congrats to that too.
Oh, thank you.
You're
It,
welcome.
it's really interesting to see how people respond to different types of nutrition advice. And the thing is that if you go on my page, I do make a lot of claims about stuff, and but really it all comes down to bio individuality as well. So that's something that I was thinking about stressing here too, because when we talk about sugar and candida, there's the bio individual aspect of all of those things as well. So making blanket statements about everything also gets you into trouble, just
Oh
like
my
sugar
God,
is
yeah.
bad.
Of course. And it's also, it can be frustrating too when you're making that content and there's always somebody that's commenting like, but you missed this. And it's like, it's a 10-second reel. What, I can't fit an entire thesis into here. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
mentioned, okay, so you also blew my mind because you introduced me to Ray Peat. I had never heard of Ray Peat before you. Like, he was, I had no idea who he was. And I wanted to ask you, when did you find him and how did you find him? And were you initially like kind of like what? Because I see your posts too about, and I remember specifically that one post you shared about a functional naturopath, I think, or just a regular naturopath
Hmm.
who said that papaya had too much sugar. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about like your journey into finding repeat too.
Oh wow, Ray Peat. Yes, that was like it was like all the light bulbs in my head came on when I found Ray Peat's work, because coming from like the fitness and nutrition, that realm of it, it was always a lot of salads, nuts, seeds, protein bars, unsaturated fats, lean meat, plant-based diets, smoothies, and fish. And that was like what you could eat. And frankly, I don't really love any of those things.
I don't think anyone
So
does.
yeah, so I can't tell you the amount of times I've choked down a green smoothie because I thought that that's what I needed to eat to be healthy. And so when I well, the other thing is I think I'm really fortunate because I did try to be vegan at one point and I lasted 3 weeks before I started dreaming about eggs and meat.
Really?
Yes, like it became kind of like an obsessive dream. And so I was like, maybe my body actually needs these things. So that was actually really funny. So I dabbled in veganism for the long period of 3 weeks.
I
Because I
lasted
really,
maybe I lasted maybe like a month, maybe
oh
two
my gosh.
months. Yeah, and I have Italian family in Staten Island, and they have like the like an antipasta. I think that's what it's called.
Hmm.
So yeah, like I went there and they knew I was on this diet, but my body was literally like, no, we can't. So it's funny how it's kind of that primal like instinct
Hmm.
too.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I can't imagine Italian food vegan. How do you even do that?
You can't. You
You
can't. I
can't.
really, it's so crazy to see everyone kind of fall into these niches of diets and they don't even
Mhm.
like what they do. They don't like eating is a chore for a lot of these people out here.
Yeah, that is something that becomes really difficult because I mean, same thing. My family had a Greek background and my grandma cooked a lot. And so Mediterranean diet things actually really bother me because we don't eat
Really?
we don't eat like a bunch of nuts and seeds. We
Uh,
eat a lot of meat.
yeah, right?
We eat a lot of red meat actually. And so I thought that was really funny. And so I definitely veganism didn't agree with me, even though everyone was telling me like, oh, this is healthy, this is how you're supposed to eat in the fitness industry. And then so I eventually, when I found the Nutritional Therapy Association and I graduated in 2018, I had a really deep appreciation for saturated fats and fat soluble vitamins, especially vitamin K2. And I had a really deep appreciation for the digestive system and blood sugar regulation. But even though the Nutritional Therapy Association didn't teach us that keto was the way, a lot of my classmates kind of just gravitated toward a keto diet. And so I've never really been interested in a keto diet because I see pictures of like a burger patty and like cheese and mayonnaise and like some broccoli on the side. And I'm just like, that doesn't sound very good to me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, there's got to be something that I'm missing. And I will never forget, I found Jessica Ash's Instagram one day. And she was one of the first nutritionists that I saw bringing Ray Peat's work to light. And she actually was talking about saturated fat and potatoes, starchy veggies, honey, dairy, and sugar. And she's like, these things are healthy and they fuel your metabolism. And I'm just like, what? I love to eat all those things. I need to learn more about this. And so I started reading all of Ray Peat's articles. I read How to Heal Your Metabolism by Kate Deering, Hair Like a Fox by Danny Roddy, The Stress of Life by Hans Selye, and Magnesium Miracle by Carolyn Dean, I believe. And I just kind of like jumped right into the Ray Peat stuff full speed and like change my diet to like Ray Peat eating or whatever. And then after my like Ray Peat phase like fizzled out a little bit, I like pulled myself back into some sort of balance where I took all of my training from all my different facets and kind of pull it back to more of a bio-individual approach for myself. So I do eat salads and I sometimes eat nuts and seeds and salmon, but then I also love my dairy, potatoes, starchy veggies, and sugar as well. So I feel like a well-rounded diet is kind of where I sit very happily, but very happy that dairy was not demonized anymore.
That was a huge one for me, especially being in like the acne type of niche. And I think, yeah, seeing your post, and I think you've made a few posts on acne too, it made me self reflect like, maybe I don't know everything about this. So, can you maybe, do you have like a theory or an insight on how dairy started getting demonized, especially like in the alternative health industry?
Oh, that's really interesting. So I do know for myself that um, dairy used to break out my skin a lot. So I would eat it and then the next day I'd get these really painful pimples on my face and then I'd stop eating it and then it would come back the next time I ate dairy again. And so I did make that and then I saw everybody's like, oh, dairy causes acne. And I saw that and I was like, that's interesting because every time I eat dairy, I get pimples. And so I did fall into that realm of cutting out dairy because I thought that it was what do they say, that it's mucus, it creates mucus, and which is so funny because mucus is like the way our digestive system works. Like when you get hungry, you salivate and you make mucus, and mucus is home to your antibodies, your IgA antibodies that help protect your intestinal lining from things getting into your bloodstream. And so you actually need mucus and you need healthy antibodies in your mucus to properly run your digestive system and your immune system, which I believe like 80% of it is in the gut because that is your access to the outside world. I think the trouble with dairy is really the quality of dairy that people are consuming. The highly pasteurized, homogenized dairy that's coming from conventional cows that are fed grain. Because I've actually seen people react to grain-fed dairy and grain-fed meat, but not to grass-fed dairy and grass-fed meat. And then raw dairy, if you have access to that, is like on a whole nother level because all of the enzymes that are present in the raw dairy can help the body absorb it a little bit better as well. And I always tell people, if you want to eat dairy, there is a way. You just have to go very slowly. When you cut it out, your body will actually get rid of the enzymes that help you to digest it because if you don't use it, you lose it.
Oh my God, that's similar, I think, to how if you stop eating meat or protein, your stomach acid starts to be affected too, right?
Yes.
That's insane. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I thought that was really, really cool. So I was like, oh shoot, I can't stop eating dairy now.
No, and it's stuff that people, like you said, you enjoyed it and a lot of people really enjoy it, and it's just sad to see so many people kind of go down that path of, I think they call it orthorexic eating, where they develop this almost fear of food. I can't have this, and then that leads to, I think, more. And you can give your insight on this. I think the stress that people associate with different foods and different fears is gonna do worse for them than actually eating the food.
Yes, you're 1,000 times correct. I'm always like, if you're driving home and you're starving, but your only choice is to stop at 7-Eleven and get like a Coke and I don't know, like one of those, like a Slim Jim, you're honestly better off stopping and eating the food than going hungry and stressing about it and letting your stress hormones take over the show, especially if you're trying to heal your metabolism. So I really do think like the stress of not eating and being so picky with foods, especially people that are like, oh my gosh, I can't eat here and I can't eat here, I can't eat here because I'm on this crazy diet. I'm just like, oh my gosh, how do you live? How do you socialize? Like, it's just, it becomes an all-consuming thing when it really doesn't have to be an all-consuming thing.
You're absolutely right. And I really like your approach because you take so much of the fear out of approaching your health. And it seems like a lot of, like I said, a lot of people are becoming increasingly more fearful. So I want to get into a transition because I'm so excited for the sugar talk. Like I said, you blew my mind the first time I ever laid eyes on your page. And I want to talk about Candida too, because a lot of people, especially with like TikTok and more acne, holistically inclined acne specialists coming out, one of the root causes they're deeming of acne is Candida, and that's why like a lot of women will stop, especially eating refined sugar, honey, even some sugary fruits like mangoes. They won't have it because they think it feeds it. So what is in your opinion, your perspective as an NTP, a functional NTP, what is it with sugar and Candida? What is it? I don't get it.
I know. And this is funny because I was just on Instagram and I saw a reel talking about a kill starve Candida protocol. And I'll let me start with sugar and then I'll get into the kill starve Candida protocol. So first of all, we know that sugar has been blamed for every disease on the planet. And this is funny because this used to be saturated fat. So I want everyone listening to kind of remember that things that are generally
Still listening. I just have to plug in my laptop.
No worries. Things that are generally made as like the end all be all cause of something usually aren't. There's usually a little more nuance to the conversation. And when someone on social media says sugar is bad, they're usually not addressing what type of sugar they're talking about. And yes, some people will say, oh, I'm talking about added sugar, but we can talk about that a little bit in a second. But the thing that is really important is that I've never actually seen anyone like pouring straight cane sugar down their throats. They're consuming sugar in cakes, cookies, crackers, baked goods, and other yogurts that have a lot of sugar in them. And these things tend to have industrial seed oils that are very inflammatory in them. They have food dyes, GMO fortified wheat with iron, high fructose corn syrup, and other food additives that are foreign to the body. And so if people are eating this, why is it the sugar in there that is causing the disease? And then on top of that, it's usually high fructose corn syrup that's in there, which is absolutely not cane sugar. If you break cane sugar down, typically it's just 50% fructose and 50% glucose. And high fructose corn syrup is actually made from corn, which usually it's GMO corn, and it has to go through this like weird enzymatic process where it becomes this sticky syrup and it actually changes from glucose into fructose. And there's some mitochondrial experts that even hypothesize that high fructose corn syrup makes the electric transport chain when you make energy go backwards. I was like, that doesn't sound good.
No, so what does that mean when it goes backwards? What happens? Because the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right?
Yeah. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So it's taking our glucose and it's making energy. So imagine it's like glucose goes in, boom, ATP or adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of the cell comes out. So the hypothesis is that high fructose corn syrup makes this process go backwards, and that can only mean that it's making all of these reactive oxygen species, which are basically these free radicals that kind of have all this energy that are going crazy, and they're stealing electrons from healthy molecules in the body. So that doesn't sound very good to me.
No, and that affects everything because free radicals affect the liver too, the lymph, and
Hmm.
oh my god.
Yes. So I'm always encouraging clients and everybody that I educate to make sure that if you are consuming some added sugar, that it is not in the form of high fructose corn syrup. And you have to be really careful because they try to sneak it into everything because it's much cheaper than cane sugar. And then because the mitochondria is running on glucose, glucose and sugar is the energy of every cell in your body. And there are some nuances, like some cells, like heart cells, heart muscle cells, do prefer to run on fat, but most of your body prefers to run on glucose. And then the reason we know this is because there's even a backup system that your liver can use to raise your blood glucose called gluconeogenesis. And it initiates the breakdown. Yes, it initiates the breakdown of your metabolic tissue, like your muscles, to break that down to turn it into glucose to raise your the glucose in your blood. So I actually heard this person that's on keto, and she was talking about wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and she was confused because she's like, my morning coffee makes my blood sugar go through the roof, and my high intensity workouts also makes my blood sugar go through the roof. And that is gluconeogenesis in action. It's like, oh, you're not going to give me sugar? I will make my own. And this is a backup system that your body uses if you're not feeding it sugar. And so, of course, this is the release of all of those stress hormones. So if somebody does go on a fast and isn't feeding their body energy, they're going to feel really energized because they're like, yeah, I'm running on stress hormones. And that's why I really encourage, if somebody is feeling burnt out, they're going to want to consume carbohydrates, especially easy to digest carbohydrates like fresh vegetables, especially cooked root vegetables, fruit, fresh squeezed fruit juice, honey, and maple syrup. And cane sugar is perfectly fine in a balanced diet. I think there's one other argument that I want to address about sugar. And a lot of people say that sugar robs the body of nutrients. Have you heard this one?
No, I haven't. That's new. But tell me about it. I
Okay.
want to hear.
Okay. Their argument is that if you eat cane sugar, that it's stealing your some of your minerals. And I think that the wording of this is a little bit incorrect because to make energy, your body actually does need minerals like magnesium, and then it also needs copper to run through the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. And so, yes, if you are just eating sugar and you're already in a mineral depleted state, then your body doesn't have what it needs to actually utilize that sugar as energy. But if you're eating a mineral rich, mineral balanced diet and you have a lot of minerals and you're aware that stress depletes minerals and you need to replenish your magnesium and your vitamin C and your B vitamins, then you're going to be able to handle sugar a little bit better. And the sugar isn't stealing your minerals. The sugar is using minerals to create energy. So
Oh,
I hope that
no,
makes
it
sense.
does. It does. So it ends up being it sounds like the real culprits that we're talking about here is high fructose corn syrup, seed oils, industrial
Mhm.
oils, and then also somebody who is minerally deficient. Those
Yes.
sound,
Mhm.
that makes a lot more sense. And it, it's I think it's very refreshing to hear because what a lot of people do, kind of similarly how you said when you would eat dairy and then you would stop and then you'd eat it again and you'd
Mhm.
see all these symptoms. I think people have that type of same reaction to sugar, but they just don't know what it actually is. And sugar just ends up taking the brunt of it.
It does. Yes.
So
And that, oh, sorry,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
what were you saying? No, no, finish.
Oh, oh my gosh, sorry. A bunch of snow just fell off my roof.
Ah, no, it's
Scared the,
okay.
scared me. Oh my gosh, I was like, oh, there's an avalanche. I'm just kidding. Um, I was just going to mention that there is something to be said about somebody that has mitochondrial dysfunction and isn't able to properly utilize glucose. So somebody with maybe insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. So that is something that needs to be addressed for somebody to be able to properly utilize glucose. So again, it's kind of that bio-individuality nuance that needs to be addressed when working with somebody as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I really like that. I try to have that approach as well, but you have such like, I really enjoy how you have the experience of also exercise and science as well as nutrition. I really love how you've married all of them perfectly.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So when we talk about Candida, I know my specialty is acne. I've noticed that
Mm-hmm.
when I see things like Candida, I also typically will see things like, or rather, not Candida. When I see hormonal issues, I've been noticing estrogen dominance more and
Mm-hmm.
more lately. So, somebody who's listening to this, and also the connection of estrogen dominance to PCOS, which I had no idea about because they all say it's
Mm-hmm.
androgens and testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and somebody listening to this might be like, estrogen dominance, what is that? So
Mm-hmm.
how do you recognize signs of estrogen dominance as a young woman?
Oh, this is something that I struggled with a lot. And mine was mainly from taking birth control. And so as somebody who didn't have any nutritional background or anything like that, I was prone to listening to my doctors. And when they put me on birth control, I was like, okay, sure. Like I wasn't trying to get pregnant, and so I thought that it was a really good idea to be put on birth control. But it turns out that birth control actually shuts off your brain's connection to your sex organs. This is hormonal birth control specifically. And then it replaces those hormones with synthetic hormones. And then typically a practitioner just says, oh, whenever you want to get pregnant, you just come off birth control and everything's fine. And for me, everything wasn't fine. I ended up gaining a bunch of weight and feeling like really fatigued. I had really bad anxiety. My breasts would get really, really sore before my period, and like I remember I'd have to like sleep in a bra because they like couldn't move around at all. They were so sore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. And they used to get these like lumps in them called fibrocystic lumps. And so I was like, what's going on? Like I never had any of these issues before I went on birth control because I literally just went on birth control because I was in college and I didn't want to get pregnant. And so when I learned that there's actually repercussions to this, I was like, oh, maybe I should look into like what's going on with the menstrual cycle. And so just a quick view of what's going on during the first half of our cycle, that's called our follicular phase. And estrogen should be the dominant hormone during that phase. So estrogen rises during the follicular phase. And then about halfway through the cycle on day 14, we ovulate. And so the ovary releases an egg. And after ovulation, the emptied follicle or the emptied egg sac becomes a temporary gland called the corpus luteum. And this gland is what makes us progesterone. And so during the second half of our cycle or our luteal phase, progesterone is the dominant hormone. So we have estrogen. We are estrogen dominant naturally in the first half of our cycle. We ovulate, and then we are progesterone dominant in the second half of our cycle. And then if the egg is not fertilized, progesterone rapidly falls and we get our period. And then the whole thing starts over again. The really key takeaway is that if you're not ovulating, you're not making progesterone. That is, if you're not ovulating, releasing that egg, and that gland is not becoming, or the emptied egg sac isn't becoming the corpus luteum, we don't get any of the progesterone. And that's how estrogen dominance occurs. So we're estrogen dominant. We don't have any progesterone to counterbalance that estrogen. And so we enter into estrogen dominance. And then on top of that, our world is filled. I know, right? You're like, everything
It just keeps
sucks. It kind
going.
of does. Our world is filled with estrogenic compounds called xenoestrogens, like plastics, even BPA-free plastics, our beauty products, stuff we put on our face, stuff we put on our body, stuff we put in our hair, it's all filled with xenoestrogens or fake estrogen that our body that will actually act as estrogen in our body. So we have two things to worry about. We have the excess of estrogen in the environment, and we also have the fact that we're so stressed that ovulation is either not happening, it's happening intermittently, or we're having completely anovulatory cycles. And this is what pushes us into estrogen dominance, which is bad PMS, painful, irregular periods, lower sex drive, unexplained weight gain, especially in the hips and thighs, and then sometimes in the stomach due to high cortisol, the sore breasts I was talking about, the lumps that come and go with your cycle, headaches, migraines, and then mental struggles like anxiety or sometimes a more depression state. And so these are all things that are caused by really just being so stressed that we're not ovulating. It's crazy to think that stress again is one of those things that it is actually causing real problems in our body.
Wow. It's so funny that you mentioned like the weight gain in those specific areas because I actually met with a client today. She was like, I
Mm-hmm.
actually noticed I started losing weight like in everything you just said, all those areas. And it's because we were touching base and she was like, I just feel I don't feel stressed. I feel different. I'm not like always running to places. I have like a self-care routine, a
Mm-hmm.
morning routine, just from nutrition too, but also making time for herself and making sure she was intentional about how she was living her life
Mm-hmm.
has been one of the biggest game changers. And I like your post on Instagram about how hormonal problems are stress problems is something that I don't really see anybody talking about. I feel like everyone's always like, fix your gut health, do
Right.
a castor oil pack, you'll be fine.
Right. That's so amazing to hear about your client. Wow, that is so cool. I
Thanks.
love that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I have to say thank you to you too. I have to say thank you to you because a lot of your teachings are how I got those results with her, and like
Oh, that's
everything.
amazing.
Yeah, all the stuff you post, all the resources, like I would look into because it gets results. So if you guys want to work with Maria, you definitely should.
Yes, I would love that. The Yeah, I think stress is something that I talk and stress is funny because a lot of the times it's kind of like I sometimes I would go to the doctor and it's almost like a throwaway thing. It's like, oh, it's just stress that's causing that. I'm like, no, but what is causing your stress is really the important thing. Because you can't just the blanket statement of stress doesn't really mean anything to anyone. Like, what is your stress? Is it chronic infections? Is it a poor diet? Is it not getting enough sunlight during the day? Is it a hard relationship that you're in? Is it somebody who's sucking all of your energy? Some like a I don't know, just a stressful relationship with a friend or family member. So you have to kind of figure out what your personal stress is. But your body perceives all of these stressors as the same, especially from a female biological perspective, right? Because right,
No, say
our
more.
yeah, like our like even though it may not be your specific goal to reproduce, from your female biology, it is always like we got to reproduce, we got to keep the species going. And so if you're always faced with chronic stress, your brain is going to be like, hey, reproductive organs, it's not safe out there to reproduce. We don't have enough nutrients coming in. We don't have a safe environment. We're feeling threatened. So this is not a good time to ovulate. So that's why stress is such a big factor in ovulation and in turn progesterone production, because no ovulation, no progesterone.
The way you just put that literally broke my mind. Like at the baseline, we all need to feel safe. And
Yes.
the fact that your body interprets things that are going inside your body, like you mentioned infection, to a really stressful or toxic relationship as all the
Mm-hmm.
same, and it feels like
Mm-hmm.
it's under attack is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever worked with a client where they you knew that it was because of stress and they like kind of swore up and down, oh no, I'm fine, like my mental is fine? Have you ever had that experience? How
Yes.
do you
And
handle
this is
that?
it's very delicate because this
Huh.
there's a a sympathetic dominant state of the nervous system that's almost addicted to stress. So these are your type A people, your, get up, go-getters, work out at 5 a.m., throw their, bring the blow dryer and everything to the gym, get ready, go to work, have, survive the workday on like 1 cup of black coffee, and then come home and then chill with a glass of wine. Or maybe they can't chill, they can't sleep. They're always on their to-do list. And these are very difficult people to work with because it feels good because they're running on stress hormones. So they're being fulfilled by being productive, and it's really hard to let them come to a state where they can relax and allow their nervous system to relax. So just giving them things that they like to do is really helpful. So anything they like to do, even if it's a high stress, is moving them in the correct direction. So I'm like, okay, well, if you're not exercising, maybe you like to go take a high intensity exercise class, and that fulfills you. And then maybe at some point I can sneak in a yoga class if they're enjoying going to the gym or something like that. Or maybe I can sneak in a sauna session. Maybe they like to do something like that. So really just adding things in there that they like to do and they'll gravitate to is really important, because they usually don't see anything wrong, because stress hormones, they feel really good. That's why you feel really good when you're on keto. You have all this energy when you're fasting, is because when you're thrown out into the wild and you need to survive and your stress hormones are raging, you're very alert, awake, your brain is clear, and it feels really good. It feels really good to run on stress hormones. So it's a hard place to be. But we want to stop them from getting into that burnout phase. Because it's harder to get somebody out of a burnout phase than out of a sympathetic dominance nervous system
Really?
state.
Why is
Yes.
that?
Because at the point of burnout, I would say that their mitochondrial dysfunction is a little bit more prominent, and there's just more stressors that have kind of piled on and piled on and piled on. And it's going to take time to kind of remove those stressors one at a time. And then because they don't have the energy to make the changes, that adds a really hard challenge on top of that. Because usually when people hit that burnout stage, sometimes called chronic fatigue syndrome, or aptly known adrenal fatigue, it's that I can't get out of bed feeling. And telling somebody to make all of these nutrition changes when they're just struggling to get out of bed in the morning is very, very hard, versus somebody who is married to their to-do list. So that's a little bit easier to get them to make some changes.
Okay, I understand. Yeah. Oh my God. I didn't. You're blowing my mind here again. Adrenal fatigue is something that in herbalism they still are very
Mm-hmm.
what's it called? They don't talk about what you're talking about. Is what I'm trying to say.
Uh-huh.
Everything is heavily blamed on sugar still in my education sphere. There are a lot of plant-based vegan herbalists out there. So
Mm-hmm.
this is blowing my mind. You are a functional hormonal specialist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I got the acronym right. So I wanted to
Yes.
ask you, I wanted to ask you what your biggest gaps are that you see in the healthcare slash nutrition system or industry when it comes to women's health.
Ooh, let's see. So I think I should start by talking about a story about my gynecologist, because
Ooh.
it kind of blew my mind what
Hmm.
happened. So I was just there for a regular checkup, and I informed her that I wasn't on birth control. I was doing the fertility awareness method, and it was
Uh-huh.
working really well. For
Hmm.
those of you that don't know, it's just tracking your cycle and your temperatures and fertility signs, ovulation signs. And if you want to learn how to naturally, a natural birth control method, the fertility awareness method is amazing. But I highly recommend working with a fertility awareness practitioner, so you learn how to do it correctly, because it is different from the rhythm method, which is what most gynecologists, they'll be like, oh, that's not accurate, the rhythm method. And so no, the rhythm method is not accurate. But so I was telling my gynecologist this, and she was like, oh, so you're not looking to get pregnant? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, do you want to go on birth control? And I was like, no, I don't want to go on birth control. I just told you what I was doing. And she was like, well, what about the IUD? Because you don't want hormones. And I was thinking, I was like, no, I'm not really interested. And she was like, well, let me just show you how it works. And I said, okay, why not? So she pulled out a little sculpture of a uterus and reproductive organs, and she pulls out a little IUD thing too. And she's like, okay, so we just insert the IUD into your cervix, and you, it's a little painful, but, a lot of women do it. I was like, okay. And she said, and then there's a lot of inflammation at the site. And so, your body, it's a foreign object. So your body like tries really hard to like get it out. So there's a lot of like pain and inflammation for the first couple weeks. And then your body just gives up and it's in. And I was like, okay. First of all, that doesn't sound good to me at all. Like your body just gives up because it can't get this like foreign object out. So I think that the fact that she couldn't really address my concern of not getting pregnant without saying birth control or IUD or giving me like a spiel that she had clearly practiced is a really big problem with the women's healthcare system, especially like education around the menstrual cycle. When I was explaining to her why I didn't want to be on birth control and I was trying to ovulate and make progesterone, because progesterone has all of these pro-metabolic benefits just besides getting pregnant, she kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? And it was really concerning. And I know this is just my experience, but I can't help but think that this is the experience of other women as well. So nothing that I've learned or that I teach about, I've ever heard from a doctor. When I was put on birth control, I was never informed about the possibility of post-birth control syndrome, which is what I experienced with that estrogen dominance when I came off the pill, when I had no symptoms of that before going on the pill. I was never explained that when going on the pill, there's a chance that inflammation in my body would be higher. And this can actually be measured by a marker called the C-reactive protein marker. And you can see your inflammation is higher on birth control. And then I was never told that like my microbiome could change, my pheromones could change. I could be attracted to the wrong type of person.
Yeah.
So I was just never informed of this. And then anytime anyone has a complaint about any women's health issue, it's either like, oh, put them on birth control or put them on hormonal therapy. There's never any talk, or surgery is also, which, as you know, a passion of mine is that surgery needs informed consent, that if you're not in optimal health, taking a risk of going into surgery could bring about other things under dormant issues. And so I just think all of these things is really what's missing in the healthcare system.
Wow. I knew a little bit about, I've seen the study or the article, I forgot what it was, but of women who got off birth control and were no longer attracted to their partner that they chose while on birth
Oh my
control.
Gosh. That's awful.
Have you seen it?
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's crazy. I knew that it could change your microbiome. And another thing I always see, and maybe you could speak to why that is, maybe what the root cause of being taken off birth control. There's a huge spike in acne in some women, especially the women who were put on birth control to manage the acne. Why do you think that is?
I think that a big thing is actually the liver being burdened from the birth control, and then the liver having to like clear out the hormones when coming off of the birth control as well. So I think the liver has a lot to do with acne. And I think that it's really important to know that everything that you put in your body runs through the liver. So when you eat medication or food or anything really that you put in your body, it goes into the digestive system, into the bloodstream, and everything. The liver's got to talk to everything and be like, okay, this is good, this is not safe. And so the more things that you put into your body, the more burden your liver has. And when your liver is burdened and it is not able to properly do its job, things will start coming out of your other major detoxification organ, your skin. And so anytime I see someone with rashes, acne, anything like that, my first thought is always like, what's going on with their liver? And then, yeah, and and I know that you have like so many more things besides liver and acne, but from my nutritionist background, I'm always like, their liver, what's going on? What's going on with the liver?
No, I definitely want your nutritionist perspective on it too, because it's all different from where we all stand. I wanted to ask, since we're talking about the liver, have you ever worked with women or a woman who is seeing you for hormonal issues, who has also had their gallbladder removed? Because I've actually met with younger women too, like below 20
Mm-hmm.
or who've just turned 20, who have gotten it removed. And I'm just wondering, like, what is the long-term effect of this holistically on the body?
Yes, that's very, very interesting. And I have seen a lot of people recently and younger getting their gallbladder removed. So the liver and gallbladder are very connected. So the liver makes the bile, which bile is responsible for the emulsification of our fats, so digestion of fats. And then it's also the carrier that carries the toxins out of the body through the bowels when you go poop. And so when your liver makes the bile and your gallbladder stores the bile, and then the gallbladder releases the bile as you eat fat and as you digest. And so if you don't have a gallbladder, your fat digestion is going to be impacted. So you're not going to be able to absorb fat as well. And your toxin removal in the body is also going to be impaired. So those are two really important things that we don't want impaired. So if we can save a gallbladder, it is really, really important to do so. And then if you already have your gallbladder removed, you're going to need to supplement bile acids every time that you eat, especially when you eat fatty meals, to help you absorb that fat. Otherwise, you're going to have like floating stools or greasy stools, and your fat absorption, you're not going to feel very well. You're going to, if you eat a fatty meal, it's just going to like run right through you. So I always recommend either ox bile supplements or TEDCA supplements for people without a gallbladder, and then eating that at every major meal.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, 'cause like you said, seeing younger and younger women, especially, not so much men, who are experiencing that. And I wonder if do you know if there's any effect, like, or correlation between birth control and the gallbladder, possibly?
Ooh, I don't know specifically about birth control, but I would just say that in general, since it is an inflammatory medication and does change the microbiome, and then also depletes major nutrients, like it depletes tyrosine and it depletes, which is needed for your thyroid hormone production. It depletes magnesium, which is really important for stress management and energy making in the mitochondria. And then it depletes B vitamins as well, which is also important for making energy. I would just say that overall birth control is probably making a hit on our energy production, and therefore maybe our body's not making enough energy, and it's somehow affecting the liver and gallbladder in a negative way from an energy standpoint, is my best guess. But that's something really, now I'm like, oh, I want
Right?
to look more into that.
Yeah, because it's
'Cause it,
always, yeah, it's always women. I feel like
yeah,
the patterns I've seen is women, and it's always women. The ones that I've met have been on birth control, and it's very stressed. It's a super, from what I see, a super common pattern. But you mentioned thyroid hormone, and that's another reason. I think that was the reel that I saw you in, where it was you're holding, it's, I forget the name of the book, but it has like orange and blue
yes,
illustrations.
Rhoda Barnes. Yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, I saw you holding that. And there's not a lot of talk about the thyroid when it comes to overall holistic health. Like I said, everything's always the gut, the liver. Can you talk
Mm-hmm.
to us more about the thyroid, and specifically your specialty, hypothyroidism in women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hypothyroidism is another thing that I see so much in women. And I have this theory that it is the masculine energy centered culture that we live in that is contributing to this overabundance of hypothyroidism. So, hypothyroidism is just simply low thyroid function, and the thyroid is responsible for the how fast our body uses energy. So, if we have good thyroid function, our metabolism is running smoothly. If we have low thyroid function, then our metabolism is slow and we're sluggish and tired and constipated. And then, you can also have hyperthyroidism where your thyroid is speeding everything up, and that's something that I don't really specialize in. But the masculine energy centered culture that we live in, which is like, it just glorifies the 9 to 5 and the morning routine. And so this is the, like, I need to wake up at 4 a.m. I need to get my workout in. I need to go to the gym. I need to, like, and then it's all done on like a cup of black coffee, right? And like maybe a smoothie after the gym, and it, like, eating in the car and running and grabbing something, maybe after work to eat. And it's kind of glorifying the grind, basically. And this is a little bit easier for men because they only have one rhythm, circadian rhythm, that they follow, and it is to wake up with the sun and go to bed when it is dark, and that's our 24-hour circadian rhythm. But women, we actually have a second rhythm called our infradian rhythm, and this is our hormonal cycle rhythm. So our follicular phase to ovulation to the luteal phase to our period is actually its own hormonal rhythm. And when we try to put ourselves into this masculine rhythm, like, have you ever been on your period and they're like, oh, just, you got to go and go to work, and you got to get up and you got to do this. So, just suck it up, take an Advil, and like, let's go. When really all you want to do is curl up like in the bathtub with some magnesium and a book. And that is disruptive of our infradian rhythm. And this is stressful on our body. It's back to stress again. So it's very stressful on our body to disrupt this rhythm. So we're naturally more outgoing during ovulation, and then we naturally enter kind of like a hibernation during our period. So we don't want to be out and about as much. We want to kind of like cuddle up and read a good book or be by the fire. And so tuning into this rhythm, and even if you have a 9 to 5 job, maybe just like taking the time off on your period from going to the gym and not pushing yourself as much during your luteal phase and your menstrual phase when you're actually bleeding is going to be helpful and lower those stressors, which in turn will help your thyroid function better, because always when stress is high, thyroid function is low, because when your body is under threat, the primary mode of action is survival. It is not digesting food and making energy for cleanup and repair. It's always just like, oh my gosh, what can we do right now to survive? And then birth control is another thing that inhibits thyroid function by depleting nutrients that the thyroid needs, like tyrosine, which is used to make thyroid hormones, magnesium, and vitamin C. Let's see. For hypothyroidism, there's also a couple chemicals that are commonly found in our water that are impeding thyroid function. And one of them is chlorine. Now, I don't want to say that if the city didn't put chlorine in our water, it would probably be gross. So it's our job to kind of filter that out of our water, because chlorine actually interferes with the thyroid's uptake of iodine, which is also used to make thyroid hormones. And so chlorine and fluoride actually interferes with the thyroid's ability to concentrate iodine. And chlorine and fluoride are typically found in the water and also dental products. And then the last thing to be on the lookout for low thyroid function is bromine. Bromine is typically found in baked goods. So it's important to check the food labels and make sure there's no bromine, especially if you're dealing with low thyroid function. So those are just a couple of things. I know I said stress. I keep saying stress, but find what is stressing you out specifically.
No, it makes sense. The bromine they add that to the food specifically,
Yes.
like pastries and stuff.
Yeah, I forget what they used to add besides bromine, but it changed to bromine later on. But it was something, I forget exactly what it's for. Like maybe it's to make it fluffy or to rise or something like that. But it's often found in a lot of processed baked goods.
I just have to like process everything. Oh, what's it called? Okay, so we just talked about hypothyroidism. When I shared the show notes with you, I put hyperthyroidism on there because I scroll on the Peat forum sometimes to
Uh-huh.
like see what everyone's saying. And there is some talk about how floating around that Ray feels like hyperthyroidism might not even exist. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Ooh, interesting. So I do know that if you have hyperthyroidism, it it flip-flops from hypo to hyper. This is something that I learned from one of my instructors who actually has Hashimoto's. Her Hashimoto's will flip from, and she'll get really hyperthyroid symptoms, like she'll get the racing heart and um, diarrhea and just all like things, racing thoughts and anxiety, and then she'll flip into a hypo state. So I do know that it is, calling it hyper and hypothyroidism is kind of almost a misnomer because it can be like a fluctuating state. And hyperthyroidism can exhaust the body so much that it flips into a low thyroid mode also. But I don't really get very many clients at all that have true hyperthyroidism. Actually, funny story, because I tended to be so anxious, especially when visiting doctors when I was younger, they actually thought I had hyperthyroidism because I would have such a fast heart rate and high blood pressure, and I get such bad anxiety in the doctor's office. But turns out I was just stressed and nervous.
Yeah.
So maybe hyperthyroidism is just like a form, like another form of stress. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I just wanted to
But
get your thoughts on that because I
I
see.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
You're
see.
getting me. You're getting my wheels turning.
Good. No, I love like
Really?
I
Yeah.
love when I see you posting like studies in your research too, because then it makes me want to look into it as well.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's the other thing. So you do post a lot of. I really enjoy how you have your sources for pretty much every post that you post. You always have a study for somebody to reference and do their own
Mm-hmm.
research from. But I also wanted to know, in your practice with clients, do you ever rely on your intuition to make decisions, or do you always have like more of a grounded sense of when you're helping people out?
Um, so I do rely on my intuition because so there's two facets of this, I guess. I'm I do post studies because I do enjoy researching things, but at the same time, I also simultaneously hate. It's like Schrodinger's cat. Like it is and it isn't. I do like scientific studies, but I also don't, because I can prove anything I want with scientific studies. Honestly, like I could prove that corn oil is good for you, from scientific studies because it's heart healthy. And so I think that scientific studies need to be taken with a grain of salt. And we also need to see who were the subjects, because a lot of science is done on men and it's not taking into account our infradian rhythm. And so if you do want to test women, you need to test them at the same time during their cycle. And you need to test them at each phase of their cycle to see how a woman's hormonal fluctuation changes the results of the study. So when there's studies saying that keto is amazing, I'm like, wait, but for men or for women? So I use my intuition because after hearing someone's story and their struggles, I usually have like an intuitive sense of what they need. And I think my ability to kind of think outside the box is really helpful. But at the same time, I want to get them to use their intuition. But it's kind of funny because there's a lot of intuitive eating coaches out there and they're like, oh, just follow your intuition. And I'm like, but what if your intuition's telling you to eat a box of ho-hos and a Slurpee? So I think that working with someone who uses their intuition that can kind of guide you, you almost need like an intuitive guidance to kind of get you to using your own tuition. It doesn't just come right away. So I wasn't like intuitively craving cherries when I wasn't feeling quite so well until I had learned about my cycle and everything. Like, I think, what am I trying to say? Like you have to earn your right to use your intuition as a healing perspective. So you need to kind of get yourself down to the bare bones and then actually tune into what your body is actually craving. And okay, so maybe you're craving ho-hos, but maybe that means you're craving energy. Maybe that means you need more carbohydrates. Maybe that's what that craving actually means. If you're craving chocolate, maybe you need more magnesium, and that's what that craving means. And maybe if you're craving a Slurpee, you're actually dehydrated. So I think it just takes a little bit of drilling down to actually use your intuition, and then working with an intuitive practitioner can help you find your own intuition.
I completely agree with you. And you brought up the intuitive eating coach thing. And this is more of an opinion question because I know we've talked sometimes through DMs when I repost something. I'm like, what is this? And you're like, I don't know. What is this? Um, Health at every size. Have you heard of Hayes, the Hayes method?
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Mm-hmm.
think about that?
Let's see. So there's a fine line between like orthorexia and fitness influencers that are promoting diet culture and eating a certain way and looking a certain way. And then there's also at the opposite end, there's like obesity, and being overweight is actually a health risk. There's a lot of information that says that being over a certain body fat percentage is actually a health risk. It's a health risk for your breathing, for sleep apnea. There's actually, so actually, digressing a little bit, my father actually had COVID and he was in the hospital for 28 days, I believe. And he was like one step away from a ventilator. And he made it, which is amazing. But the doctor kept coming in and he kept saying, it's a good thing you're not overweight. That's like the only thing the doctor said, like, what is saving your life right now is not being overweight. And that was like, I was like, whoa, that's crazy, because this is not being talked about. That being overweight is actually a risk factor for chronic disease and sleep apnea and breathing problems. And also, if you're overweight, you're less likely to be active. And so I think there's, I think we get too much into black and white, and there needs to be a happy medium. Like, there's nothing wrong with somebody who wants to lose weight for their health, but there's also nothing wrong with somebody who is happy at their weight and is they're trying to, they don't want to be told that they need to lose weight. So I think it's more of like, we're always like this or that, or green or red, or black or white, when really, like, we can have both conversations. We can say that it's unhealthy to be overweight, but at the same time, it's unhealthy to push diet culture on people as well. So maybe something easier to say is that we want to help everybody get healthy. And then, I don't know, I don't know anybody's health history that is very overweight that would verify them being healthy at that size, if that makes sense. You know what I
No,
mean?
it does.
So,
Yes, it
yeah.
definitely does. And I remember I used to roll my eyes when someone mentioned diet culture, but especially seeing and kind of having like the veil lifted, because when you're in it and you're like, sugar is bad, and you believe that with every fiber of your body, and you're like, everyone else is wrong. And then you take that off and you see it, oh my God, this is making people much more stressed out. This is giving people like actual mental
Mm-hmm.
problems. I wanted to ask, have you ever had any personal experience as like a fitness instructor in your own health story when it comes to diet culture? Were you negatively impacted by it in any way?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Really?
As a fitness instructor, like we're kind of it's this unknown thing that you need to look a certain way. And I actually used to be a Beachbody master trainer, not a coach, but they used to have live classes. So if you went to the gym, you could actually take a live Beachbody class, like you could take an insanity class or a size dance class. And we were always recruited for videos. And I was never picked to be in any of the videos because I didn't look a certain way. I didn't have the correct body type. And so there's like all this enormous pressure as fitness instructors to look a certain way. And I actually, when I was in college, I would take diet pills and this is so bad. I would take diet pills and I would work out every single day. I would wait an hour because the treadmills and the ellipticals were full. I would wait an hour to get on the elliptical to do my elliptical for an hour after I
An
took my diet.
hour?
Yeah, an hour. I sat on that elliptical. And that was like all you could do too. There's an hour limit. Otherwise, the girls would have been on the elliptical for like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. It was crazy. So yes, I have I have gotten my fill of diet culture. And I'm pretty sure that taking diet pills like permanently, I mean, not permanently, but I'm pretty sure that contributed to my messed up metabolism.
What is in diet pills? What is it? I've never even like seen, what is that?
So the one that so we walked into a diet shop, like like kind of like a GNC, but
Oh.
it was like right by our school, and so obviously all the girls were going in there,
Mm.
and the guy recommended this little yellow pill that you take before every meal that gets rid of your it gets rid of your hunger and your cravings. So like imagine, you know, when you want to eat breakfast or you want to eat lunch, you're like, "Oh, what do I feel like?" Like, "Oh, I feel like eating this or this." You literally have like no desire to eat anything. So you can eat whatever is healthy because you don't have any cravings or desire to eat food. And I think that what we took was like something similar to ephedra, which is illegal, but some sort of stimulant because we were told not to exercise too hard because it could be hard on the heart. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that it's legal to like sell these things to these like vulnerable college women who are like trying to lose weight and will go to any extent.
Oh my God. I didn't know what ephedra was. I just Googled it. It's a
Yes.
stem ranges chemical ephedrine banned in the US, like you said, responsible
Mhm.
for serious safety concerns like heart, lungs, and nervous system contradictions.
Yes.
For a bunch of people who are literally in the gym all the time, like constantly putting themselves through that stress, that's so dangerous.
Yes. And this is my, this is what diet culture is to me. It's just like telling women that no matter what they do, it's never enough. And so that in itself is a stress. So to me, diet culture is just another stress and it's specifically directed at women. And so is the beauty industry, and not to mention all of the xenoestrogens in the beauty
Oh my
industry as
God.
well.
Oh my God.
There's a really good documentary called America the Beautiful that
Uh-huh.
kind of goes into like the dark side of the beauty industry. We actually had the creator of the documentary come to our school and debut the documentary. I think it was back in like 2008 or something when I was in school. It's really good. I
What do they
recommend
cover?
it.
What do they cover in it? Spoil it for me.
They
What do they cover?
cover they cover like how dangerous the products are in, or the chemicals are in beauty products. They cover like what women go to get the perfect body. So the cover of it is kind of the Statue of Liberty, but it has all of the like little plastic surgeon lines on it, and it has like a face full of makeup. And so it goes over like the plastic surgery industry a little bit, and then also the diet industry as well. But mostly it was the first time I realized that the stuff I was putting on my body is toxic.
And I've noticed a lot of women don't want to give that up. That's one of the harder things. Like, people want their clean and clear. They want like the $80 Sephora. They're dedicated to their 10-step skin routine of poison. And
I
it's
know.
it's literal poison. And what's it called? It's always a hard conversation to have with people, because I've noticed, especially when it comes to health or just generally, the natural human inclination when they hear something that opposes what they believe is to like double
Mm-hmm.
down and be like, no, you're wrong. There's no way
Mm-hmm.
this can possibly be correct. One other thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up is one of the posts, and I see your feed, and more brain cells have to just keep on working for me. So I'm just like, there's no way there's this much new information. But you recently posted about lavender being estrogenic, and it
Mm-hmm.
inspired me to start looking into more herbs. As an herbalist, I was like, I don't want to start recommending stuff to people who this might have actually, and it might help one way but have a negative effect and create more problems. So I wanted to ask you, are there any other herbs that you know of that have the same type of estrogenic effect that you'd recommend, especially women, to stay away from?
Ooh, I'm not sure about specific herbs. Lavender is one of the things that I tend to stay away from because it's estrogenic. But there are foods that tend to be phytoestrogenic, which is estrogen in foods. So soy products is a big one. Soy is very estrogenic. So if you are struggling with any sort of estrogen dominance or trying to begin ovulating again, or making more progesterone, I don't really recommend soy for most women. Even like natto or fermented soy, I don't think is the best idea.
That just sounds nasty. No offense to anyone listening who likes that. That doesn't sound appetizing at all.
Ooh, it's not.
You're
I
right.
don't know. I was like, I don't know anyone that actually craves soy, but to
No,
each their own.
never, 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 never. One last question, because I remember writing this down. You recently had a post about supplements making you nauseous is a sign. And this is something that I actually have seen, not so much with supplements, but with herbs. Being an herbalist, like a lot of herbalists would be, oh, just detox symptoms, especially if you're taking something like Cholagog, which is a bile producer, or something that has like liver affinity properties. Um, it's just, oh, you're just having detox symptoms. It's just this, it's just that. But you really reframed it and said maybe it's worth looking into. So can you
Hmm.
speak more about that? You even mentioned vitamin E making people nauseous and to listen to that. So why do you say that?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think if some supplement makes you nauseous, it's your body's way of telling you like, oh, that might not be right for you. It might not be right for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, when it's a fat-based supplement, it's telling
Oh.
me that the gallbladder needs support. Maybe the bile flow isn't working as well as it should, or maybe that dose of that supplement is too high for you to tolerate at the moment. Something else that could be going on is that there might be something further north in the digestive system that's not functioning as well. Because what a lot of people don't know is that when we eat food, we need hydrochloric acid. We need like really, really acidic stomach acid to allow the rest of the digestive system to function properly. So, a very low pH of your food, which when it gets into the stomach and gets all churned, it's called chyme, is required for the release of a hormone called cholecystokinin, and that's going to also help with the breakdown of fats as well. So it could be that your stomach acid is too low, and that's why it's upsetting your stomach. Maybe you're taking it without a meal, which is also going to upset your stomach because something like vitamin E you would want to take with a meal so that you do have a proper release of bile so that you can absorb that fat. So those are just some things to take to keep in mind. And maybe if you are taking vitamin E, you might want to take like a gallbladder support supplement at the same time to help it be better absorbed.
Wow. Never even thought of that. And I remember you mentioned iron in that too. And a lot of women, especially, think that they're anemic, but they might not actually be anemic.
Yes. And this is like this is a whole rabbit hole. If you want to go down the rabbit hole,
Of
Morley
course.
Robbins, Morley Robbins is kind of he used to be known as the magnesium man, but now he's kind of like the minerals man. But basically, he has found that we actually have an iron recycling program called the RES, and so we only need a small amount of iron per day, and we need it in the heme iron form, which is actually from red meat. And then we recycle the rest of our iron. But this iron recycling can get kind of gunked up. And so if it's not working properly, we can show signs of anemia. Or if we are showing signs of anemia, we can also have, at the same time, we can have high iron in the tissues, because iron actually feeds pathogens. And so your body will take iron, yes, and it will, like, isn't iron connected to acne?
Yes, it's connected to acne, and it's connected to parasites, and parasites are almost always connected to acne too. It all comes full circle.
Yes. So as like your body's defense mechanism, it'll like snatch the iron in the tissues also. And so if you're testing the blood, but the iron's actually in the tissues, you're going to have a mismatch of iron. So it's really important to, instead of just rely on ferritin, which is the marker that most doctors usually test, to do something called a full Monty iron panel. And that's something that Morley Robbins and some they're called root cause practitioners. They offer that full Monty iron panel. So if you've been diagnosed as anemic, it's really worth looking at a full Monty iron panel to kind of get an idea of maybe you have some other mineral imbalance, like a copper imbalance or a magnesium imbalance. So that's just some food for thought, because I know a lot of women that take supplemental iron and it makes them sick, and they're not really given another option. And I really strongly believe that if something is making you sick, that's your body's way of saying, don't eat that.
And what you're saying, I'm thinking to every woman I know who's had to supplement iron because they believe they're anemic. They're the ones that always get sick the easiest all the time. Like there's always something going on. So that's very interesting. Can you tell everybody where to find you? If you have any workshops, projects, courses out that they can check out from you, services, because I know there's a lot of women out there that really need help and you might be their answer.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Maria Jean H. And that's like, if you need to reach out to me, I try to respond to my DMs. And that's where I post like all of my free education. And then my website, innerrhythm.com, has tons of free resources. And they're pretty much on like all the topics we covered today. And then as far as working with me, I have an online nutrition course. That's a self-paced nutrition course called Metabolic Makeover. And that one's specifically for women with estrogen dominance that want help with that. And then I am opening my one-on-one clients again, which is really exciting because I was taking clients for a while and then I took a break, and I am taking clients again. But this time I'm offering, because of my Functional Women's Academy training, I'm offering the Dutch test and the HTMA hair tissue mineral analysis test for all of my one-on-one clients. So if you want to get on my wait list to work with me, that can all be found on my website, innerrhythm.com, or my Instagram. You can just reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today and having this conversation with me. I know it's going to help a lot of people out there.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be on the show, and I appreciate everything.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording.
Okay.
Juicy stuff. Yeah, so okay, we took a short break because my lighting, if you guys are watching still, hopefully you are, you didn't leave rude, but it's sunset here in New Jersey. But we were just talking about functional doctors and how sometimes they can be just as bad as regular doctors, like just as inefficient. I was saying a story about how a lot of the clients that I've met and I've seen have seen functional doctors and then come to me as a last resort, and they just tell me they have pages and pages of supplements to buy from that doctor, but no talk about like sleep or really nutrition or stress or anything like that. And Maria was just sharing about your time working for a functional doctor, and I want to hear about that.
Yes, this is the Candida story, because every person. So I thought it was funny because the doctor that I worked for, she was a naturopathic doctor, and she would run an IgG food sensitivity test on every person that came in. And this test would say like yes Candida or no Candida.
Mm-hmm.
And so every person that got a food sensitivity test, including me, had Candida. And so we were all put on the same protocol. It was a Whole30 sans fruit, because that is sugar that feeds Candida, and then given a bunch of herbs, typically in a tincture called biocidin, to kill the Candida. So it was a starve the Candida by not feeding it sugar, and then kill the Candida with the biocidin, and then maybe some like gut healing with like maybe bone broth and gelatin a little bit as well. And nobody got better. Like
No.
I never saw Candida go away. I saw symptom reduction during that strict eating window for the 30 days. And then when the client, or I mean when, well, I guess it was the patient for the doctor, came back and they were eating their regular food, it came back. And often like it came back with the fury of 1,000 men. They were like like some people had like oral thrush by then, yeast infections, like brain fog, all of the like systemic Candida stuff that you really, really don't want. And this is what got my wheels turning, because I think even you said earlier, Catalina, that the kill starve protocol is very popular in even herbalism.
Very.
But I saw hundreds of cases, and this just really got me thinking, like, is this really the best approach? And I think the question we need to ask is, why is Candida overgrowing in the first place? Because Candida can actually be a helpful little microbe in our guts. It can actually help us digest food and make some nutrients for us. So why is this communal bacteria overgrowing in our gut? I think that that's the real question. And by the way, when you restrict Candida from its fuel source, which is sugar, it doesn't just collapse and die and be like, oh, I'm done. It bites. Exactly. It bites, and it even can like extend its little arms into like the gut wall and kind of create little holes. And so it can start to get into the bloodstream because it's looking for sugar. It can even raise stress hormones and like do gluconeogenesis for you and make its own sugar. So we actually don't want the Candida to get aggressive like that. And that's actually what happens when we try to starve it. So we actually want happy Candida in our guts. And that's surprising to most people, because I feel like with pathogens, we're always like, let's go in and take them down. But maybe with Candida, we need to come at it at a more loving angle. So why is our gut harboring the environment for Candida to overgrow in the first place? So that's really the question, because we should have our immune system and our digestive system should be keeping Candida in check. So those are two facets to look at. We want to look at our digestive system. We want to look at the performance of our digestive system. Are we digesting food properly? Are we allowing our migrating motor complex to sweep the bacteria and food every couple hours into our large intestine? Because our bacteria should be mostly in our large intestine, where they're able to be communal and help us out with digesting food. It shouldn't be as much up in the small intestine. When bacteria starts to overgrow into the small intestine, we start to get into SIBO, or small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and this can contribute to Candida as well. And so when we're not having food move through the digestive system at a good pace, due to low thyroid function, we're going to have food sitting in places where it shouldn't be, and bacteria is going to be like, oh, the food's up there, it's not where it's supposed to be, so it's going to crawl up to the food. And so thyroid function and digestive function are really two important pieces of Candida overgrowth and helping that out. And then the immune system component is also really important. So our immune system should be keeping Candida under control. If it's not, we have to think, what is going on in our body that's pulling our immune system in different directions? Do we have chronic stress? Do we have chronic infections, maybe mold toxicity, mycotoxins in there? Maybe we have parasites. Maybe we have inflammation that's just pulling our immune system in all these different directions. And so it doesn't have the foresight to take attention to Candida. Are we stressed? Are we pulling our blood flow away from our digestive system and into our extremities all the time so we don't have the resources to handle that Candida overgrowth? And I know you're probably all looking for some practical tips for Candida overgrowth. So besides addressing those things, which you'd want to work with a practitioner to find what's actually causing the digestive disruption, the migrating motor complex disruption, the immune system disruption, and thyroid function disruption, really easy things that you can do at home. And Catalina probably knows the raw carrot every day.
Yes.
Yes. Raw carrots actually, their fibers help move Candida down the digestive tract naturally. So they'll be in a better place. So they'll be happier and a little bit more nourished.
It's so
And
funny
then,
because, sorry to interrupt you, but it's so
oh
funny
no, go
because
for it.
like there's a website, like literally the Candida Protocol website, like .com, some shit like that. But they, like, carrots are a do not eat because they have sugar. So a person who's, I swear to God, like,
No.
I swear to God, like, so it's so interesting how it sometimes in like the alternative health sphere, it's almost like reductive to what's it called? Yeah, so it's like,
Yeah.
no, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the reductionist viewpoint of
It's like you can't whittle something down to just fit this narrative when it has this whole other function that could be something that that person needs and is missing.
Yes, exactly. That was like beautifully stated. Yes, the reductionist view. Carrots are more than just sugar. Yeah, carrots are not sugar. Don't worry. If you're worried about eating carrots because they have too much sugar in them, ooh, that is like orthorexic territory over there. So yeah, raw carrots really good for moving. It's also really good for estrogen dominance because those carrot fibers are specifically good at binding excess estrogen. And like I mentioned earlier, Candida has the ability to raise stress hormones to create its own sugar. So really like stressing about not eating sugar and creating more stress hormones is really just suppressing the immune function and kind of digging ourselves deeper into that stress-based physiology that got us to the Candida overgrowth in the first place. So I tell clients, like, don't worry about eating sugar. There might be some sugar that, will not bring as many Candida symptoms, but test all the different types of carbohydrates and sugar and see what feels good. Because when you take away your primary fuel source, don't forget, not only are you starving Candida, but you're starving your cells of energy as well. And your immune system needs energy to run. Your immune system doesn't run on thin air. Your immune system runs on energy, just like everything else in your body. So you want to fuel your immune system with easy to digest fuel. And then lastly, like, I know I keep coming back to stress, but stress is something that really impairs all of those things: the digestive system, your thyroid function, your immune system, and your metabolism.
No, beautiful. Amazing. You started talking about SIBO, and I see SIBO a little bit more now, especially on Instagram. And I think of a few people that come to mind where like they have that approach of, I'm on this really rigorous antifungal or anti-parasitic, anti-pathogen herbal protocol, and I can't eat XYZ. And I'm noticing that those people, they're not healing. Like they just really are not. And what is your take on recovering from SIBO? Because I know that a lot of people out there are actually struggling with it more than they probably know. It's not something that I think is easily diagnosed either.
Yeah, SIBO is a tricky one because it's really similar to Candida in that you're having the overgrowth in the wrong place of the digestive system. So my approach to SIBO is more of, let's try to get the digestive system functioning optimally. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the thyroid health and your digestive health are intimately tied together, because your thyroid is in charge of how fast your food moves through your digestive system. So if somebody's in a hypothyroid state, their food isn't going to move as fast through the digestive system. And then if they're eating things that are also like hard for the digestive system to break down and move through the gut, like a bunch of plant fibers that are getting kind of like stuck in the small intestine because the gut isn't moving as fast as it should. And so they're just sitting there. And like I said, the bacteria is going to go up there and they're going to have a little party in the small intestine. That is something to be mindful of. So if you're trying to do a plant-based diet and you're getting a bunch of SIBO symptoms, you need to look at your thyroid health and say, okay, food isn't moving through my digestive system as fast as it should be. And so I'm having food sitting in places where it shouldn't be, when really we want our plant material to be in the large intestine, where our bacteria can make us some butyrate and some vitamin K to help us along. So thyroid function is probably the number one thing I would address when facing SIBO. And then I would also actually eliminate most plant fibers from the diet and just give the person some easy fuel in the form of like fruit and fruit juices. And I would eliminate like any type of roughage that's going to slow down the
Like kale.
digestive system. Yes, like kale. Kale is not good for
I hate kale so much.
for healing thyroid. Yeah.
Do you still have time?
Yeah.
Something that you recently posted that I've been seeing, because I follow Matt Blackburn on Instagram. He talks about it all the time. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Oh, yeah.
LIPOFUSCIN?
About LIPOFUSCIN?
Yes! Yes. Can you talk to us a little bit more on that? Because I've never, in my studies, it's never been a thing. Not even in my atmosphere.
Yeah, so I had no idea about LIPOFUSCIN, but I had always heard of like all the biohackers are all about autophagy. And autophagy is like the cellular cleanup that gets done when there's no food in the digestive system.
I just thought of Dave Aspey.
Yes, right. Oh my gosh, Dave Asprey. Oh man. Dave Asprey recently, he just said that putting like a tablespoon of cream in your coffee is going to give you stomach cancer. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like talk about promoting food fear.
That confused me too, because it's like dairy and milk milk and butter are both dairy. So like, what's he doing?
Yeah, and I don't even know. I just thought that was really funny. Like you can put like a stick of butter in your coffee, but you can't put half a tablespoon of half and half in your coffee, which is like one of the most fat dense sources of dairy besides butter. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I just had to bring that up because I always see everyone in like the metabolic community kind of like riding his coattails, and I think it's really funny. But as you were saying,
oh yes, so autophagy, what Dave Asprey talks about all the time. So everybody's like, oh, we need to do all this cold thermogenesis. We need to do the sauna. We need to do this. We need to do the Wim Hof breathing. All these things because autophagy. And I can hear Matt Blackburn in my head saying like, but autophagy doesn't work when you have LIPOFUSCIN. And so like that was always been in the back of my mind. And for some reason I like pulled out my old textbook that was recommended by my NTA instructor, Kathy Eason. She said, this is a great book, Enteroimmunology. You need to get it. And so I was like, sure, I'll get it. And I found LIPOFUSCIN in there. And I found that saying that Matt Blackburn always says, autophagy cannot happen if there's LIPOFUSCIN. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, it's in the book. This must be true. And so what LIPOFUSCIN is actually when iron and usually polyunsaturated fats, because they're unstable, go through lipid peroxidation and combine with iron. And then it's like this weird sticky substance called LIPOFUSCIN. And it's an iron oxidized form of lipid peroxidation. So Morley Robbins says that you can see lipofuscin in the liver by if you have liver spots on like your hands or your forehead, you can see that's a form of lipofuscin. And whatever's on the skin is also on the liver as well, and probably more so on the liver. So if you're doing all of these things that the biohackers are saying, like the cold thermogenesis and all of this hormesis stress, because you think it's going to be improving autophagy, you have to look and see, am I eating a bunch of polyunsaturated fats that are unstable with a bunch of iron supplementation? Birth control has iron in it. A lot of foods, like every wheat that I can find is fortified with iron. Cereal is fortified with iron. So if you're eating this iron rich diet and you're eating a bunch of polyunsaturated fats or industrial seed oils, you're going to get lipofuscin, and therefore you're not going to be able to do all of this wonderful cellular cleanup called autophagy. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, nuances, right? Because just because Dave Asprey says that you should jump in 40-degree water doesn't mean that it'll work for your biology.
This is true. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just how like my brain is understanding it, it kind of sounds like lipofuscin is like almost your body kind of rusting on the inside, and then it's like,
Yes.
yeah, and it's coming out.
Yeah.
Also, very interesting what you said. Whatever's happening like on the body is also happening on the liver. So when I think of like acne, what would that liver look like when we see things like cystic acne, especially?
Oh, I bet the liver would definitely be affected. So I'm imagining like, I'm also imagining this from like an energy standpoint, because when mitochondrial function is not working as well as it should be, the first organ that gets shut down is the skin. So whenever you see, you have your practice is really beautiful, because like you have like almost the first defense too, because when you start seeing skin ailments, that's a big sign like, oh shoots, like cellular energy production is not optimal, which means that liver health is not optimal, because the liver obviously needs energy to run its functions.
It's the hottest.
I feel,
Sorry to interrupt you. It's the hottest
oh
organ
no,
in herbalism. Like it's the
it is.
seat of
It's like,
metabolism.
it is.
It's
Yes.
a yang.
It's the
It's a
hot organ.
yang. Yes, I love it. Okay, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say like yeah, I was basically going to say what you said. The liver is the cornerstone of the metabolism. And so when the skin is showing signs of something, it's automatically being like, we need to look at energy production, which in turn means you need to look at the liver, because it's the cornerstone of the metabolism. So yes, I would say if you do have acne or are working with acne, it is wise to look at the liver as well.
So interesting. Yeah, lipofuscin has never been something that's been in my wheelhouse. I think that's all I have for you. I don't think I
Cool.
have anything. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. I'm pretty sure.
Sweet. That was really good.
Awesome. Hold on, let me pause it.
Good.
Because
I'm like super into drainage, because I like watched a whole thing on mitochondria and like cellular energy function, and how mitochondria have like two functions besides energy production. And so I'm like super like nerdy about drainage and mitochondria.
Can you send that to me? I want to see.
I don't know if I can, unless you're a cell core. I'll see if I can, but it's the old, I know it's a recording from the conference last year in Idaho. And but you can look up. So Ari Whitten is, he's not the guy who coined the term, but he talks a lot about it on podcasts. His podcast is the Energy Blueprint podcast, but his name's Ari Whitten. And it's the cell danger response. So it's that mitochondria actually they can be like in relax mode where they're making energy, or they can be in like danger mode where the cell is stressed, and they'll like leak energy for the immune system to use. And so like when you get sick, you feel really fatigued. That's your mitochondria switching into like danger mode. And so if too many of your mitochondria are in danger mode and not enough are making energy, you're going to be in essentially adrenal fatigue. But it's actually the mitochondria, not the adrenals.
That's so, and I really, again, That's so interesting that you also, and that's where I was going with this, how you felt about like the role of parasites when it comes to health and even hormonal, because your specialty is hormonal health. So how do you,
Hmm.
where do you see that come up a lot in like your clients and stuff, and how do you handle that, and what's your perspective on it?
Yeah. So, um, drainage is really, really important. And what I mean by drainage is that you need to be excreting toxins through your urine, through your poop, through your skin. And you need to make sure that those pathways are open, that you're going to the bathroom every day. And if you're going to actively do a parasite cleanse, you need to be going to the bathroom like 2 to 3 times a day to get those things out. So what parasites can be is they're a big stress on the immune system because they're not supposed to be there. And so your body's always going to be on high alert, trying to be like, "Oh, what is this threat?" And so parasites are something that I think is really important to get rid of, especially if you're working on your hormone health, because your immune system and your digestive system and your thyroid function isn't going to be running optimally if there are parasites present. And this goes with like if there's chronic infections present, if there's mold present, if there's viruses present, anything that's going to cause another stress on your body is going to in turn prevent proper hormone function. Because like I said, your brain's going to be like, hey, there's stress, so we can't ovulate right now, and so you're not going to be making progesterone. So a parasite is going to be another one of those stressors.
Damn. So by
Mhm.
association, parasites can also affect your ovulation, your capability to be
Yes.
pregnant and stuff. Wow.
Sorry, I was like, did my husband just flush the toilet in the back? You might need to cut that out.
It's okay.
I'm
Everybody
sorry.
poops. No, who
I
cares?
know.
No, don't worry about it. That's so
Well,
insane.
during the parasite talk too. It's
Uh-huh.
perfect.
Yeah, right? It was meant to be. That's
Yeah.
crazy, like how health is so layered too. So you really do have to. How do you feel about that? Where I know some people in the field feel differently about, you can do as much as you can while you're like, you can heal yourself on your own. But are you
Hmm.
more of the mindset of like everyone should, if they have the capability, if they have like finances allow and etc. Like, should they be? If should everybody in a perfect world, should everybody be working with some type of functional specialist?
I in a perfect world, yes. The problem is that there's so many. I feel like there's so many people who have been to so many different practitioners that I don't want to say that the public is losing faith, but like it's just tough when you've been to doctor after doctor after doctor after functional medicine doctor to naturopath and you still haven't gotten results. So I think that maybe there needs to be a more in-depth screening process that clients could go for. Or they should really take the time to work with somebody that they really align with their type of work. So what I mean by that is like if you really I really gravitated toward Ray Peat's work and saying that like potatoes and sugar and honey is so like that's what I would gravitate to work with. If you're vegan and you gravitate toward plant-based eating, you're going to want to work with a practitioner that is really versed in that type of eating. If you gravitate more toward carnivore or keto, which can be healing diets, let alone for certain things, I do feel like they are a little bit more of like symptom relieving diets. But again, if that's what you gravitate towards, I really think that that's the type of practitioner that you should work with. So I guess there just needs to be some sort of vetting program. I don't know if you like someone's Instagram, maybe reach out to them if they
Yeah.
feel like they're doing good work, if you feel like they're doing good work.
I think a lot of people also they end up spending that much money because it's often people who feel very desperate. So they'll see like
Mhm.
I've had people who see me and a functional not
Yes.
functional or integrative doctor at the same time, and then they just end up confused because a lot of times what we're saying is
Mhm.
we're butting heads. The person
Yeah.
their doctor's saying don't ever eat sugar, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, and I'm saying, hey, listen, you can actually have potatoes, you can actually have sugar, just watch out for these
Mm-hmm.
things. It's just a lot of confusion. So, like you said, a part of that is the vetting process and making sure that um you're using your intuition, it sounds like, and making sure you're picking somebody that's resonating. Aside from Ray Peat, is there, and Morley Robinson, are there any other people in health that you, maybe not even like well-known names or like professor or anyone that you've known has done like a bunch of research that you really resonate with? Is there anyone else like that for you?
Yes, I am like mildly obsessed with Dr. Cowan.
Who is
Do you know
that?
that? Oh my
No.
gosh, Dr. Okay. Dr. Cowan is like, he wrote the book, The Heart. Okay, I don't know if this is the name of the book, but he wrote a book about the heart not being a pump. And I, of
Really?
course, yes, being drawn to like all things that are
Uh,
not mainstream, was like, I need to read this book.
mhm.
And he makes a very compelling case that the heart is not a pump, but the heart's actually like a water kind of, or like a blood restructuring type device, that's in
What?
like a hexagonal like structure, and
Uh-huh.
that the blood actually moves at the capillary level because of the charges, which is why grounding can be so beneficial, because if you're if part of you is negative charge and part of you is positive charge, this negative and positive charge moves the blood at the capillary level. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know. I wouldn't say like I agree with everything Dr. Cowan says, or Ray P or Morley Robbins, but I just think that he brings very interesting ideas to the table. And he's very interested in the fourth phase of water, which I also love Gerald Pollack's book, The Fourth Phase of Water. There's more than 3 phases of water.
What do you?
What,
There's
what,
three. What are the other three? What do you
what we learned
mean?
what we learned in school was wrong with solid, liquid, and gas.
Uh-huh.
There's a fourth phase called structured water or easy water, and this is the water that the cells utilize
Uh-huh.
the best. And so it's like this aligning of the water molecules that allows the water to be properly utilized by the cell.
Uh-huh.
That's why if somebody's drinking tap water, I'm often like, if you switch to more food-based hydration sources like fruits
Uh-huh.
and vegetables, that
Uh-huh.
those things have the ability to structure water in themselves, so you'll get more hydration that way rather than just drinking plain tap water. So if anyone's interested in that, the book is called The Fourth Phase of Water by Gerald Pollack.
So, hold on. You're telling me. So, so tap water is unstructured. Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
food hydration from things like fruits are structured. I'm like a six
Yeah.
year old right now. So could you maybe like go over that one more time?
Yes. So structured water
Uh-huh.
is the way, so you can't see. Hold on, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Like, you're not going to visually see a difference in the water, because
Mhm.
I can, like, I'm drinking structured water right now. It's structured from my Somavedic.
Uh-huh.
The water has a certain energy to it when it's
Mhm.
structured, and it has a certain appearance. So if you look up structured water, the molecules are kind of stacked in a certain way, and the way this water is, it is able to be utilized better than just regular water by the cells. And sunlight
Oh.
actually structures water as well, and like running like a running stream, that's structured water.
And that's because it has so much sunlight exposure, probably, right?
Yes, the energy is what structures the water. Yeah,
Hold the phone,
so it
because
turns water into its fourth phase.
what you're saying, like, it sounds reminiscent of something that I might have read, but I'm not certain because I don't have the book. But I was gonna bring it up anyways because everything that you're saying about how he has this different theory. I read this
Mm-hmm.
book called Extracellular Matrix of,
Ooh, cool.
yeah, I forget the entire title. It was written by this herbalist called named Matthew Wood. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
holistic medicine and the extracellular matrix. And I want to say, like, he had to have reference one of the people that you're talking about or the person you're talking about, because it sounds so reminiscent, but I wanted to bring it up because, well, let me look at it and see if there's anything. These are all herbalists. Because there's a bit of research in the book that goes into how, what's the word? How in the scientific community, people think like, and this is going to kind of divert into something else, but people think that
Mhm.
the science that doctors are taught is kind of like the only science that exists.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
through this book, and I mean through like COVID and stuff too, I think most people, or like people in our field and people who probably listen to us, have discovered that within the scientific community, people are like feuding on stuff that like the general public
Yeah.
has like accepted as just like fact. Like,
Yeah, you're right.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is. It is. And stuff that's been like deemed as fact was like deemed a really long time ago by some like random stuff, and then it just like is accepted. Yeah. And like nobody's ever been like, wait a minute. Is that even
No,
true? Yeah,
no
yeah.
one, no one.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So uh, he talks about 3 stages of healing: inflammation, granulation, and remodeling. New matrix. I don't know most of these words, but it was super cool. He was talking about, I forget who it was. He didn't reference. It wasn't Louis Pasteur. It wasn't the germ terrain
Mhm.
theory. It was something about cell structure itself, where it was oh my god, I wish I could remember. I'll send it to you later, but I just wanted to bring that up because people listening to this might be like, that sounds crazy. Like, that guy sounds crazy, but people in
Right.
science literally disagree all the time. Like, that's why we have theories.
Mhm.
That's why, like, it's all about testing what you think to be the truth and seeing if it is tested against different variables, if it's consistent, or if there's something that you're missing. So that's just really cool
Mhm.
information, I just have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that blew my mind. And it is funny because what you said about structure, that's like one of the big things in physiology is structure determines function.
Mm-hmm.
So if things aren't built correctly, they don't function correctly. So building things properly is really, really important in your physiology, because if stuff isn't built correctly, like a receptor on your cell membrane is like a little wonky, then
Huh.
then the little molecule doesn't fit into the receptor, and so that doesn't work. And so structure is really important to determine how things work in the body. So that's why we want good nutrition, so we're building proper structure so we have proper function.
Are you a big believer in the kind of as above, so below, the whole geometry of nature and stuff, and how something that I like to say is that the body the human body mimics the patterns of nature. So something similar to,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, something that I say to people a lot in herbalism, there's tissue states, or humoral medicine, which is basically dampness of the tissue, dryness, moisture, uh, stimulation or heat, coldness, and depression and atrophy. And the
Mm-hmm.
example I always use is that, think about a bathroom that it has no windows in it and you're just taking showers constantly and that steam has nowhere to go. Mold happens. So it's similar to how the body is, where if like the food that you're eating has nowhere to go, if you're not eliminating properly, dampness or things like pathogenic overgrowth are going to happen. So do you have this are you big into that? I kind of call it like wee wee woo wah wah type of sense into health.
Yeah.
Do you what's your point of view on that?
Okay, yes, I love what you just said. You just described that so beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
Um, and it's something like I never thought about because I don't have an herbalism background with the dampness and all that. I have more of a like an energetic perspective of the body. Like I completely believe that we have like an energetic field that extends, outside, which is why like when you're around people, you can kind of like sense the energy of
Mm-hmm.
a room. And also that like the patterns in nature, like circles, Just like if you look at like the circles on a tree that's cut, you can see those patterns repeating like in the iris in the human body, or like if you cut a bone and you like look at it, you can see the circles. So I think I get a little like Zach Bushy with the
Oh, I love him.
the connection to nature. Yeah.
No, but I feel like that's so necessary because I feel like it all goes full circle where when we relate it back to nature, I think it's easier to see the root causes of which I also want to ask you about of root causes of disease. If you're constantly another analogy in herbalism is the roots of disease. So there's literally like a picture, like if you're only focusing on the branches of things like acne, like elimination, like you're saying, eliminating all those things like psoriasis, eczema, if you're only focusing on that and you're not looking at the actual like roots of what you're going through, you're never going to get better. So that leads me into, I feel like every person in health, for example, like Dr. Jess, have you heard of her?
Yeah.
Oh
the
yeah, you
parasite
mentioned
lady.
Yeah, you're mentioning Self-Course, of course.
Yeah.
The parasite mold lady. Her whole thing
Yeah.
is like the root causes of all disease are parasites, mold, Lyme, I think, and then like emotional trauma. Like those are her four.
Uh-huh.
And then other figureheads, I can't think of any right now, have those similar type of, I guess, blanket or like mission statements. So do you have one for all disease? Do you relay it back to like 3, 4, 5 things?
Yes. So I relay most disease from stress, and
Mm.
that stress can be parasites, it can be mold, it can be emotional trauma. But even deeper than that, I think that the root of all disease is actually mitochondrial dysfunction. So our body not being able to meet the energy demands that it needs to meet. And so I I think we were talking a little bit off the air about this, but I just learned that mitochondria actually have two states. They have their energy production state where they're happy and they're making us cellular energy, and then they also have their battleship mode. And this is like new information. It's called the cell danger response theory, and like obviously it's just a theory, so I don't want to call this like this is the end all be all to disease.
This is it.
But I know, right? But it makes so much sense because the mitochondria, they even look like little bacteria to me. I mean, I don't know, I feel like there's something more going on than them just being these like, I don't know, just these things just make energy for us. I think they're actually sensing the environment, and when they flip into this battle mode, they're not making us efficient energy. And what flips them into this mode is stress. And so when you have a stressed system and you have mitochondria that aren't functioning efficiently, you're going to not have energy to run your immune system. You're not going to have energy to make thyroid hormones. You're not going to have energy to fight off infections. And so I think that really the root cause of most disease comes down to mitochondrial function. So I'm a really big advocate at restoring mitochondrial function. And if they have flipped into this like battle mode and they have started to run on less efficient fuel, like glycolysis that produces lactic acid, then it's really important to get them back into utilizing oxygen and glucose properly.
Wait, give me 1 second. Can you
Oh,
hear
yeah.
that? What the heck? Could you hear that?
I don't hear anything.
Huh?
Or I've heard like a beep a second ago, but.
Wait, now I can hear you. What did you say?
Oh, I said I heard like a beep a second ago, but then it went away right away.
Okay. So you weren't recording for that entire time because somebody called me. My laptop wasn't on Do Not Disturb.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm
That's
so
okay.
sorry. So like you were talking,
No, it's fine.
and all there was, and I was trying so hard to like focus on what you're saying, and your mouth was moving, and all there was the stupid marimba song.
That's so funny.
Okay, start over because I know what you said was important.
Okay. Oh, was it you asked me the root cause of what I believe the root cause is?
Yeah,
of
and
most
then
chronic issues.
yes, and then we were getting into mitochondria function. I think I don't know where it stopped. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Let's see. So I think that like most chronic disease is caused by mitochondrial dysfunction or the mitochondria not being able to meet the energy demands of the person. Because really, if you break it all down, like you need energy to do everything in your body. And so I think that stress is one of the big contributors to mitochondrial dysfunction, but it's more than just saying like, oh, we need to take away our stressors. We actually need to build resilience to our stressors. And we also need to help our mitochondria function properly because yes.
Okay,
Because
sorry, I just have to ask, like,
yeah.
does learned helplessness have you ever heard of learned helplessness?
Yes, the like
Does
dorsal vagal response
Yeah, does that have
kind of,
something to,
yeah.
like, it's the act of I had a psychotherapist on here the other day too, where it's like you learn through habit or through trauma or whatever it is that you're helpless, and it's something that they've actually seen recorded in studies. And I was just wondering, because what you just said, um because learned helplessness is like a lack of resiliency. So I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I just had to say that, like, um when people feel that way, or I was going to ask if you had heard about it, does that affect mitochondrial function as well?
Ooh, it probably does. Let's see. So I'm not sure if these are similar, but I know learned helplessness. But I'm also thinking like there's the polyvagal theory of the
Hmm.
nervous system,
Hmm.
and that we actually don't just have parasympathetic and sympathetic system. We actually have the dorsal and ventral vagal system as well. And that dorsal vagal system is, I want to say that like it's almost like the learned helplessness. So have you ever been so stressed out and you like, you're running on stress hormones and you make your list and you do all the things, but then the next day you're like so overwhelmed that you're paralyzed and can't do anything?
Hmm.
That's the dorsal vagal nervous system response there. So that's you flipping from sympathetic into that, like it's like an overwhelmed, very it's a very closed state in their nervous system. So I want to say that maybe that is close to learned helplessness, but I'm not familiar of the specifics of learned helplessness. But that was just something I know that sounds similar. And I do know that in that state, the mitochondria are not producing energy efficiently.
How did how did health get from, like, alternative health? How did it get reduced to something just like gut health when there's things like this that exist? Like, I feel like there's also kind of a missing gap where they don't really talk about, like, it's like a touchstone, like, yeah, and if you had some bad stuff happen to you, or if you have a bad relationship, whatever, but if you take these probiotics, your
Mm-hmm.
life will be
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
better.
The mental health probiotics. I feel like, don't they? I'm sure they have
What?
like probiotics for anxiety or something like that.
How do you feel about probiotics? Are you someone that takes them or recommends them to clients, or do you often want them to get them from food instead? Like, I know kefir has probiotics.
Mm-hmm. Um, let's see. I have a love-hate relationship with probiotics. I think that most
Really?
probiotics are actually a scam, and don't even make it to the large intestine. I think they get like annihilated by the stomach acid. So first of all, they have to make it to where they're trying to go.
They come in like, yeah, then somebody was like, not today, bitch.
Exactly. Like even especially the ones that need to be refrigerated. I'm like, wait, they need to be refrigerated, but then they're going in my hot 98.7-degree body and they're gonna survive. I don't know about that.
She's making
So
some
that
real
just
good
tells me they're
points.
very fragile. I think that lacto fermentation is actually your best bet because
Yeah.
it's like the natural fermentation process of vegetables and whatever you're fermenting is a better bet than probiotics, because I swear that there's a company of probiotics I read that they got their probiotics from like the outside of birds, and I was like,
What?
that doesn't sound, yeah, yeah. And I was like, that doesn't sound like something that should be in my gut, because I'm not even sure that we like know what is supposed to be in the gut. So I just think that you're safer using lacto fermented foods over man-made probiotics that they're just adding to the foods.
was
I mean,
that
to
was that probiotic made by Charlie Kelly? Like, that literally sounds like, that sounds
yeah.
like fight milk. Like that doesn't
Yes,
sound
I bet it.
that doesn't sound good. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I don't know if you know anything about this. I haven't looked into it, but what do they mean when they say human strain probiotics? Like, it might sound like a bimbo question, but did they get that from a human? Like, what do they mean when they say that?
I'm not entirely sure. I would guess it means that they have some evidence that those probiotic strains are in our guts, native. Um, but I mean, I'm not a big fan of the stool tests, the GI tests. Like
Really?
I know a lot of practitioners run those because
Yeah.
I don't think what you're excreting is a good representation of what's actually in a healthy gut. I think that's like a waste
Interesting.
product, and
Uh-huh.
then like what's in your gut is in your gut, and then if you're excreting stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's proliferating in your gut.
Hmm.
And I don't think that we have like nearly the idea of amount of different microbes that are actually in the gut. And there's microbes everywhere too. There's even microbes in your brain, in your blood, in like everywhere. Everywhere is like a little community of microbes that like talk to each other all the time. So it's just more complex than like, oh, you poop this out and you have like this and this. You're like, oh, you're missing this strain of bacteria. I don't know. I did a stool test once and it was
Yeah.
very unhelpful.
That's so funny. You pooped it out? Well, by that logic, that's the problem. So,
Right.
what would you recommend for someone who's saying, "Oh, my practitioner is saying I should take a stool test. I don't really know what I should do." I guess it would depend what their specific ailment is. So, in the general mindset of somebody who's getting a stool test, what would be a better option, or like, how would you handle it for someone that you saw?
So typically when people are doing stool tests, they're usually looking for or well they either have GI symptoms or they're looking for like parasites or some sort of overgrowth. So I think that I would really address gut health just in general because everybody
Yeah.
could use gut health help. Especially like the hardest part about gut health is getting people to slow down when they eat and chew their food. And really that would solve like 99% of the problems that people are having.
Oh
But
my
it's like
God!
the hardest thing.
Yes.
It's the hardest thing to get people to do.
People forget that digestion doesn't start in your stomach; it starts in your mouth. That was
Hmm.
probably one
Hmm.
of the simplest things I learned while like studying herbalism that they
Yes.
also taught us. But it's changed lives, and especially, how do you feel about? Do you think it's? Do you think? How do you feel about people that don't eat in like a present type of state where it's like the phone is going or they're on YouTube, they're not really focused on eating? Do you think that also has negative impacts on how well you're digesting, absorbing, etc.?
Yes. So back to like from like a Candida and SIBO standpoint also, like
Mhm.
chewing your food's really important because you actually have enzymes in your saliva called salivary amylase that begin the digestion of carbohydrates. And so if you don't digest your carbohydrates up here, they're going to make it all the way down and they're going to cause, your gut to have a party, which is, bloating and gas and all of that because you're not chewing your food properly. And then the other thing is if you're distracted while you're eating and not in a parasympathetic state, you're going to most likely have high cortisol, especially if you're working or answering emails. And cortisol pulls your blood flow away from your stomach because you're not prepared to eat when you're stressed. You're prepared to run from a threat. And so your digestion is going to be impaired in that way as well.
Oh my goodness. That was a good way to put it. When we're in that state where our body is literally like
Mhm.
pumping full of adrenaline, even if it's on a smaller scale, from the way you're describing stress, it really doesn't matter. Like your body is still gonna register that as, is there a bear? We can't relax. Like you
Mhm.
just you're you,
Right.
you can't be present for that. So interesting.
Mhm.
Is there anything else? Like, oh my God. Like I feel like every time I turn off record, we talk about something else. I'm like, oh my God.
I
Um,
know, I know. We're like, oh my gosh, keep recording. I
um,
don't know.
did you have anything
I think we might
particularly?
have I think we might have covered it all
Yeah, right?
and more.
Yeah, definitely more. Oh my God. Thank you. Hold on, let me stop it then. All right. Okay. Fuck, did I just lose it? When you said that, you mentioned you have high serotonin. Um, I feel like there's this type of, especially when I speak to people who maybe want to become like a nutritionist or come into the wellness field, that they have to be perfect, like fully like perfect health wise in order to help somebody else. Do you have any like advice on that, or how do you feel about like practicing what you preach but still not being like perfect?
Yeah, I think it's actually better when you are not perfect, because then you have your experience to pull from, and you know personally what's hard to do and what is going to be challenging for your clients. For example, like I know I should have my coffee after breakfast, but it's still a challenge for me because having coffee when I wake up is like something that makes me really happy. And so like I kind of are like, okay, well I can do it on some days and not other days, but I know in my mind I'm like, okay, well that might be if my client has a habit of having coffee in the morning as their like meditation, then it might be a hard habit for them to break. And I know that because of my own experience, because it was such a hard habit for me to break. So I think coming into it not being perfect just really helps you understand your clients more.
That's a really good like balance. Again, we go back to balance is your common theme
Hmm.
of looking at it. Because yeah, if you're too dogmatic, if you're too perfectionist on everything, how are you going to help talk someone else down from that? Because a lot of clients get
Right.
that where it's like, I miss this. Am I going to die? Like, am my acne going to come back? Am I going to just completely regress? So I really like what you said about that. Okay. I think we're done.